Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe was one of the leaders who were invited to China's show of force earlier this month. At the end of their visit, it is reported that they concluded a much closer relationship between China and Zimbabwe. As we know, the relationship between China and Zimbabwe has already been extremely close. And it dates back to the fight for independence. China was Zanu PF's main backer in that war. And ever since the country attained its independence, the two countries have been even closer. But what is worrying for most Zimbabweans is the level of looting that has been taking place in Zimbabwe. And one of the nations that have been at the forefront of that looting is China. What has Zimbabwe got in return? Well, it would be better to ask, what did Zanu PF get in return? And the answer is the diplomatic backing for the dictatorship. There can be no doubt that one of the countries that has helped Zanu PF stay in power for these last 45 years is China. So this even tighter relationship, closer relationship, particularly in the present situation where Zanu PF has found itself after the 2023 elections, for instance, without many friends, because even countries in the region, SADC and the AU, condemned the elections as flawed and illegal. Some of the SADC heads of state failed to come to Mnangagwa's inauguration because the election process was condemned as flawed. This is the political reality. So this even closer ties with China can only be worrying. Ben, welcome to the program.
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. You know, the more I look at it in terms of the relationship between China and ordinary Zimbabweans, I can safely say most Zimbabweans out there, they really do not appreciate the Chinese way of doing business, and the relationship is not very great. But then on the other hand, there is the relationship, the close ties between the Zanu PF and the Chinese government, which for me is very unfair. But like you said, it's you scratch my back and I scratch yours. I think that is how best we can put their relationship there. And when you take a look deeper into that relationship, is you pay me for the favors that I am doing. Hence you find that the relationship, again, in a business, using business eyes to look at it, it's very, very unfair. Because on one end, the Chinese are mining and taking whatever they want at a very, very huge scale. It's take as much as I can at as soon as possible. and they send everything right back to China, and nothing is being, given back to Zimbabweans. So for me, I think it's the relationship that exists between, Zimbabwe and China should just be called, Zanu PF and the Chinese. Period.
Yes, it is most unfortunate. Um, in this trip, it is reported they signed a number of deals. The problem with some of these deals is that they are not transparent. So we find ourselves in a situation where even if they are not in the country's interest, Zimbabwe's interest, they are signed. And if you look at what the Chinese have been doing in Zimbabwe, one of the areas they've been involved in is mining. Even with the late dictator Mugabe, in 2016, Mugabe fell out with the Chinese because he was complaining that they were taking the resources, but they were not giving the country anything back. It was a mistake, of course, for Mugabe, because as much as he kicked the Chinese out of Chiadzwa and Marange in 2016, he himself found being kicked out of office a year later in 2017. And many people believe the Chinese played a role in that. So this is the political reality that the Chinese hold on Zanu PF itself has been enormous. And this is the reason why many would argue the Chinese are literally doing as they damn well please in Zimbabwe. And this is most unfortunate.
If we were to dive deep into the relationship, you would find out that, Zimbabwe as a country is up to its neck in debt to China. That no one can dispute that. The Chinese have given this government, the Emerson Mnangagwa government, so much funding, be it for, campaigning, loans to buy whatever, and so forth. And how do you pay back when you don't have an industry that is functioning? You don't have, your economy basically is performing very poorly. The only way and the only thing that they have to offer is the minerals. Zimbabwe is rich in minerals. It's one of the richest countries out there with a lot of mineral wealth and diversity as well. So they get given funding to do whatever they want, buy cars, travel and so forth. And in exchange, they give away mining rights. Now, when you give away mining rights, you are basically saying, do as you please, for a certain period until, full value has been paid. So this is now, we're at a situation where the Chinese are now taking full value of their, of their worth. Wherever they discover whatever they want, be it grave sites, be it somebody else's house, be it, near water sources, rivers or whatever, they will go and drill and excavate and do whatever they please. It doesn't matter even if it's unsustainable, it destroys the environment. They don't really care because the deal obviously says take what you can. So again, you find that it is the ordinary people that are suffering. They are now being bulldozed out of their properties, out of sacred sites and so forth, burial grounds, etc. It's very, very sad the way it's being done, and yet you find that because Zanu PF is not being impacted directly, they say they are very, very good friends, and they will go on and sing praise that our partnership is so good. But yet, on the other hand, Zimbabweans are the ones that are suffering.
Well, here is a video of what happened north of the Zambezi in our neighboring country, Zambia, at a Chinese mine. And I think it's well worth watching.
Disaster on an historic scale has begun. At a copper mine in Zambia, owned by the Chinese company Sino Metals, a dam holding back a reservoir of toxic waste has collapsed. What some experts claim is one of the worst and least reported mining accidents ever has been unleashed. Matched, they say, by one of the worst government and industry cover-ups. It is spewing lethal chemical poison, arsenic, cyanide, uranium, lead, mercury and more. Soon, slicks of dead fish line the river shore. Nearly 2/3 of Zambia's 20 million people live along the vast Kafue river system.
It is an environmental disaster, really of catastrophic consequence when we consider the fact that Sino Metals has polluted a river on which millions of people depend for their livelihoods. We're also talking about wildlife. If we look at the communities in the immediate vicinity of the river, the entire livelihoods have been destroyed.
A helicopter drops lime into the river to try and neutralize the acidity from the spill. The dam waste was so acidic it could dissolve human bones. And after the dead fish, the dead and dying crops. Week after week of damaging delay went by. From the air, the scale of the damage is clear, the scarred, polluted landscape of the now empty reservoir. The government did order Sino Metals to pay for an independent survey to assess the damage. And that survey appears to have been buried by the government and the mine, but Channel 4 News has obtained a copy exclusively. Tonight, we can reveal this 385-page report compiled by South African environmental assessors who sampled hundreds of sites in the vast toxic slurry. The river supplies drinking water to about 5 million people, including the capital, Lusaka. So, weeks of painstaking research, thousands of samples taken. And you'd think, wouldn't you, that the emergence of this report would trigger, even at this late stage, the kind of large-scale cleanup that was required. In fact, nothing like that happened at all. The environmental assessors say it would need at least 100 trucks a day for over a year to begin clearing away the contamination. Watching all this, the environmental assessors appear to have lost patience. In early June, they wrote this letter to the government begging them to take action. The language they use could hardly be more stark. Their letter says that official reports stating that 50,000 tons were released is grossly inaccurate, and that their estimate is 30 times that, over 1.5 million tons. That's not all. They write that extremely hazardous substances were released, including arsenic, cyanide, uranium, and other heavy metals, which has created a toxic environment capable of causing irreversible harm to both the ecosystem and human health. Communities are at serious risk of developing birth defects, cancers, liver and lung disease, heart conditions, and other chronic illnesses. Without immediate intervention, the consequences for future generations of Zambians will be severe and long-lasting. By now, others had had enough. The US Embassy broke cover on June the 12th, issuing this notice, telling its nationals to evacuate urgently from the polluted region. That produced no major action from the authorities, so the Americans put out another warning in August, now saying even breathing the air in the pollution zone could be dangerous. That did it. The very next day, the government called a press conference. Surely they were about to take action. Quite the opposite.
Laboratory results show that the pH levels have returned to normal and concentrations of heavy metals are steadily decreasing, which means that the immediate danger to human, animal, and plant life has been averted as we speak today.
But the minister wasn't done yet. His clear message, nothing to see here.
All serious implications on public health, water safety, agriculture, and the environment have been brought under control. There is therefore no cause for alarm.
Meanwhile, the mine is putting out PR videos claiming the water's safe to drink. Far from cleaning up for local people, they're buying up local people. More PR images of food handouts and around £800 compensation for affected families. Some, unable to read or write, sign with a thumbprint. The Chinese management say they're in it for the long haul.
On behalf of Zanu Metals,
Ben, what do you think?
This here video, it's so close to home. This is exactly what we are experiencing in Zimbabwe as well, just south of the border of Zambia, where we are finding that the Chinese are causing so much havoc on the environment. They are mining mountains where now people are at risk of landslides. They are drilling big pits and leaving them like that, and water fields during the rainy season. And our children are exposed to these. Children are falling into these pits and having to die from drowning or getting stuck in the mud. Cattle, livestock, all these are just death traps. But you find out that both governments, and this is particularly African governments, they play it down. And again, to me, the reason why they are doing this is because they really don't have a choice. They have to pay back debts that they went and took from China. This is the only way how most African countries can pay back debt, by giving away mining rights. And when you give away those mining rights, you're basically saying that you have all power. Do as you please. We will not, intervene. And that is a very, very dangerous position to be. You become powerless, and your people become exploited. They become harassed. They are kicked off their own lands, and worse now, they are having to be poisoned. That is very, very unfair, and worse again, you are finding government officials justifying it and doing all the PR work to say everything is okay. It's not right. It's not right.
Well, for some people who are not familiar with the map of Zambia and Zimbabwe, this is the border. Along there is the Zambezi River. There is Kariba Dam. Lusaka is just up there. And Kafue River is this one here that flows in. It flows in just downstream of Kariba Dam. But the amount of pollution that has taken place there will be washed down Kafue River over the years and will no doubt, if not cleaned up, affect Zambezi River itself. Like I said, it's not flowing in upstream of Kariba, but downstream of it. So the rest of Zimbabwe side of Kariba Dam, if the pollution is not cleaned up, they will be affected. And then it will flow into Cabora Bassa, which is in Mozambique now. And God knows how long it will take for those minerals to be neutralized. It could take decades, judging from the amount of, only talking at 1.5 million tons of the pollution. That is a lot. So this is something to really worry about. And I agree that African governments are not doing enough. The kind of mining that we have seen in Zimbabwe by the Chinese clearly shows that they really have not paying attention at all to how they are doing the mining and how it's going to affect the environment in the long run. Between the Chinese and the Zanu PF government, all they want is maximize their profits. And in the case of Zimbabwe, and I'm sure it's the same thing with Zambia, you find that the country itself is benefiting very little from the mining activities that is taking place. In Zimbabwe, I don't see the situation ever changing until we change our political system. And this is where free, fair, and credible elections come back. And at the present moment, like I said at the beginning, a closer relationship between China and Zanu PF can only mean that China is emboldened to back up its protege in Zimbabwe to stay in power at all costs. So political change in Zimbabwe is going to be a really tough job, because China has no intention of giving up Zimbabwe now. It now considers Zimbabwe, particularly Zimbabwe, as its sphere of influence in Africa. The regime is totally dependent on the Chinese to stay in power. The Chinese know it and are taking advantage of it. This is the tragic reality in Zimbabwe. Ben, do you want to give your closing remarks?
Thank you. In closing, I would want to say how Africa would need, more Traores, more Nelson Mandelas. But above all, we need citizens who are knowledgeable, citizens who demand accountability from their leaders, and not citizens that that think with their stomachs like the gentleman that appeared in the previous video, thanking for 800, pounds that he has received today. And then he forgets about the problems that he is going to face and his children's children will face for decades to come. We need to wise up as Africans. We are being exploited. These are our minerals. These are our children's wealth. And we are giving them away at a rate that is so alarming. I mean, I've seen the amount of destruction the Chinese can do in a day with their mining equipment. They will rip everything within a matter of hours. The place will look different. This is not sustainable. Our children's wealth will be lost, and our children will hate us for allowing this to continue. And I think, some of these mega deals need to be revised and look at their sustainability. Will we leave an environment for our children to inherit? Will we leave some of these minerals there for our children to come and also amass for their own children's children? We really do need the Traores. We need the Mandelas to come and at least, help us out of this mess. Thank you.
So while Zanu PF may be celebrating this prestigious relationship agreement they've signed with China, Mnangagwa is signed with China, ordinary Zimbabweans have every good reason to be seriously worried. This is not good for Zimbabwe. An emboldened Zanu PF will only mean they will be even less reluctant to hold free, fair, and credible elections. And China will do everything to help the regime stay in power. Political change in Zimbabwe is becoming even more elusive. If we want political change, we really have to up our game as a nation. Because those in power are upping their game to stay in power. That is the tough reality in Zimbabwe. 2028 elections, Zanu PF will rig them and will try to stay in power. And they will buy the opposition just as much as they bought the opposition, the police, the judiciary, the ZEC, etc., etc. The citizens have got a fight in their hands if they want to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. Think about it. Thank you very much, those who were able to join us, and I hope you'll be able to do it again tomorrow, 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.